What's up, guys? So today's video is going to be a bad film review. I'm going to be reviewing the Russian superhero film The Guardians. I will be watching its English dub version, so I'll be judging it according to that. So I will also be doing a critical analysis of how well the dub fits to the original film, obviously. And I'm going to sort of get through all of the little bits that I would normally go through at the beginning of the video before the intro, because as you can probably see on my screen just here, I haven't actually watched the film yet, so I'm about to go and do that right now. So I'm literally going to be giving you guys like an as I watch it review, and then at the end I've also got a little bit that I want to sort of talk about as well. It's one little thing that I remembered after uploading my deep dive into the Black Widow film, and considering that Black Widow is also a Russian superhero, I felt like this was the best way to get that across. So I'm very lucky that this film didn't do very well. So if you haven't seen one of these videos, I take a film, I break it down into 10 sections, give each of those a score out of 10, with those 10 sections being script, casting, acting, directing, cinematography, editing, soundtrack, special and visual effects, location and set design, as well as accuracy and or originality, whether it has source material or is a new idea. And then that gives me a full score out of 100 when I add them all together. And that way I'm able to sort of be a bit kinder to films that got really bad scores, but it also lets me sort of explain how certain things came through over different layers, and therefore why certain films got such bad scores. And then, like I said, at the end of this particular video, going to be adding in one extra little point of trivia, as well as a little bit of a theory as to another potential plot point that the Black Widow movie may introduce into the MCU. So I'm going to go watch this film, do my analysis, and I will be back to you as soon as I've done that. It is already like 8:30 or whatever, so it's going to be pretty late by the time I do this. So if I'm whispering, it's because my sister's literally next door trying to sleep. But yeah, I'll be right back as soon as I finish this video. Okay, so let me just turn, it's pretty loud. I'll turn the volume back down a bit before I turn the TV itself off. Okay, now that we're all finished with that, wow, that film did not deserve the rating it got. I mean, there are parts where it could have done better, but for what it was, that was pretty good. Okay, so normally before I get into my review of it, I give the scores. But being that this was a Russian film, and that things like Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic are predominantly American sites, there's not a lot of scores on the internet. Only ones I could find were Rotten Tomatoes critic score of 30%. There was no audience score. Nothing on Metacritic at all, and then a 40% on IMDb. So an average of about 35% based on only 2 out of the 5 scores that I normally give. So obviously I'm leaving a little bit of leeway there for what the others would have been. Yeah. Now, so scripting, you have a 5-2. The storyline was pretty basic for a superhero film. The bad guy wants revenge for perceived rights that he has been denied, based on his intelligence and the fact that he feels cheated of the accolades he thinks he deserves. So he goes looking for revenge. Superheroes step in and stop him. It was pretty basic. So he gets a 5. Casting is a 7. The woman that plays Ksenia, Alina Lanina, she's attractive. I mean, she is. And the others fit for what their nationalities were supposed to be. Just realised that my clock, which is sitting here to help make my room darker, because it glows in the dark, is probably very loud in the... So the acting score is also a 7 for the same reason as the casting. It was pretty solid acting. There were some parts there where the choreography or the camera was in the wrong spot for the choreography, to make it look realistic, and so it definitely looked fake sometimes with people being thrown or being choked or whatever. But other than that, we're still pretty solid. So acting gets a 7, directing again gets a 7. Bringing out the performances that they were able to bring out, considering pretty basic storyline, I think they made some very solid directing choices. And considering that this film came out in 2017, right after Dawn of Justice had gotten an absolute mauling by the critics, and that this came out in Russia in February of 2017, and then later that year internationally, I think it did pretty well for itself, all things considered. As I said before, cinematography, sometimes the camera was in the wrong spot for the choreography, so the cinematography loses 1 point for that. It did happen quite a few times, so the DOP and the cinematographers weren't quite on cue with how the actors were going to be moving for the choreography. The editing gets a 5. There was nothing overly spectacular about the editing. The soundtrack gets a 7. It was mainly Russian music, being a Russian film. Is not really a surprise, but I mean, I listen to Rammstein and I have no idea what they say either. So for what it was, the music was pretty solid, as well as the actual movie score fit for the emotions that they were trying to get across. Special and visual effects gets a 5. Actually, you know what? No, we're going to make that a 6. We're going to take it up 1 extra point. There were some very solid parts, and then there were some very basic parts. So I'm going to have it sit at 6 to sort of border the line between basic and a solid score. Again, nothing very amazing bit that they had. There was a bit that looked very fake. There was one shot there where a plane crashes in behind some buildings, and the size of the plane that they had animated to fit behind the buildings would have done some sort of structural damage to those buildings as well, but those buildings don't look like they get damaged, even if it was computer generated damage. So yeah, some basic bits, some very sort of lackluster bits, and then some really awesome parts in it as well. Location, set design gets a 4, and I feel like this is because of the score that I've given accuracy and originality, which is a 2. I don't feel like this is, considering that this film came out in 2017, right near sort of the 10-year anniversary of the MCU, when we're sort of building up into the peak of superhero movies. Like Phase 3 had just started for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. DC had just decided to start their DCEU. We were getting a new Transformers movie that year. I think we got a new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie that year. So like this was kind of around the like absolute height of serialized superhero films, which, yeah, I mean, we may still get Transformers. They may just branch off and do individual stories for each different character now. Doesn't look like we're going to get much more on the Ninja Turtles. I haven't heard anything about a third movie. DC's decided to go back and start doing just and sort of like re-look at their whole DCEU plan and start sort of rebuilding from what they've got currently, what they've found works for them, what they've found doesn't work for them, and hopefully staying away from their two big tent poles of Batman and Superman. And yeah, Marvel's now moving on into Phase 5, so there's nothing stopping them. But with all of that going around, even with all the really cool power sets that this movie had, and the really cool characters that this movie had, nothing really original about it. And to that effect, I have some notes. So the movie itself opens up with sort of a weapons demonstration for the military, kind of like at the beginning of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, the very first one, where just after Norman gives himself the Goblin serum, and there's that weapons sort of armored suit thing being tested out, and he comes along and destroys it. In a similar way, this had a weapons demonstration that's then very quickly taken over by the bad guy of the film. This weapons demonstration happened to have tripod attack robots, kind of like the droidekas from Star Wars. And they get taken over by Professor Kuratov, who, even from his very first appearance in the film, gives off some serious Doctor Doom vibes. Everything from his army of robots, because of his ability to manipulate technology, to his origin story as a brilliant scientist overshadowed by another brilliant scientist, then to the fact that he fights a team of 4 heroes in this film, just sort of drives home the fact that this this cyborg character has enhanced his own powers with technology in the same way that Doctor Doom is able to, at least in the comics, manipulate both magic to a degree, as well as having a brilliant scientific mind to be able to invent and put technology to his own betterment. And I mean, if they had that version of Doctor Doom in the MCU, I wouldn't be too mad at it, but from what we've gotten so far, I'm not liking the chances. We're then introduced to Patriot, which is kind of like Marvel's S.H.I.E.L.D. or DC's Argus. It's basically just a fictional intelligence agency created for the purpose of bringing together this team, kind of like how S.H.I.E.L.D. brings together the Avengers in the MCU, and Argus brings together the Suicide Squad in the DCEU. So, again, nothing new there. The Guardians were created after they refer to it as the war. It's never specifically mentioned if that was World War One or World War Two. Either way, it's very similar to Winter Soldier's backstory, where he was literally experimented on after a war in Russia. There's even a shot there when Kuratov is fighting Lur, and he literally does Bane's backbreaker kick with his knee from The Dark Knight Rises. So even his fighting style is based on a villain. Another thing that I sort of thought of afterwards, they kept saying that he'd cloned himself, and then you finally get to see that the clones are all, I mean, they would have all been played by like stuntmen and stuff with just masks over their heads, so they didn't have to keep putting him in. Would have lowered the budget that they needed for it. But he has a clone army, just like Chancellor Palpatine in the prequel trilogy, and then Darth Sidious / the Emperor in the original trilogy of Star Wars. That clone army becoming the Stormtroopers, obviously. The suits that the Guardians get copy and enhance their abilities, just like the Fantastic Fours, and even based on their powers, we can even, and I've got purely Marvel characters here too as well. Lur is basically the Juggernaut meets Sandman, so he can control rocks instead of sand, but still sort of like earth bending, I guess. But he's able to build himself a big rock skin, sort of like the Thing, who would be the role he takes on if this was the Fantastic Four. And then he's able to use that to sort of run through solid objects as well, with nothing really stopping him, because once he's got this full rock suit on, he's kind of bulletproof. So he can just keep running, knock people, buildings, whatever, out of his way, as well as having sort of the telekinetic ability to manipulate and control rocks, the same way Sandman's able to do that with sand. Arceus would be kind of like the Hulk, with his having his human scientist mind and then his animalistic rage mind. But he would also copy the Winter Guard character Ursa Major. I will talk more about him in a second, because that has to do with my Black Widow thing that I thought up after uploading that video. His role, if this was the Fantastic Four, would be Mr. Fantastic, and I know that it seems like as sort of the muscle of the group, because the leader of the group really is Lur, that those two should be swapped around. But the reason I've got them that way is, first of all, Lur actually has stone skin, and the second part is that Arceus would be Mr. Fantastic on the basis of the romantic subplot that he has with Ksenia. Khan can move super quick like Quicksilver, as well as his main form of attacking being with swords like Black Knight, among some other Marvel heroes, but the most notable being Black Knight for using a sword. And he would be the Human Torch, not really by default because of all the other roles being taken, but also because the speed at which he's cutting things with his swords, which are also shaped like a sickle, the same one that's in, like, you know, the hammer and the sickle from the Soviet Union sign. Not only are they shaped like that, but whenever he cuts them, and at the speed they do, they glow red hot for a second. So he even has, to an extent, some sort of control over, or some usage out of heat manipulation sort of thing. Plus the fact that moving at the speed he does would mean that he builds up a lot of heat through kinetic energy. All sorts of points him to being the most like Human Torch for this group. Then Ksenia would be like name a reader, and on the basis of, and obviously all these characters for Ksenia are female. So Namorita is the cousin of Namor, so she's an Atlantean, she's able to breathe underwater, but she can also turn herself transparent. They say invisible in this, but realistically she's turning herself transparent. Crystal from the Inhumans is able to manipulate the 4 elements, so one of those being water. Water manipulation isn't really a big power, I found out, for heroes. I mean, DC has a couple with like Mera and some of the Atlanteans being able to manipulate water, but for Marvel, it's not really a huge, like, the most notable one that I can think of is Hydro Man, where it's purely just water. And then obviously Ksenia would be the Invisible Woman, not only for being the only female, but also on the basis of the romantic subplot as well. And yeah, so for those reasons, accuracy and originality gets a 2, and then with most of the film taking place in either the bad guy's lair, which is always an abandoned building of some kind, which in this case was an abandoned factory. I mean, one large enough to be able to hide an army of clones. And then the team, unless they're actually out in the field fighting, being at Patriot, which is, like I said, basically just S.H.I.E.L.D. or Argus, so it's just a big room, bunch of rows of computers, and a big table at the end, with a big sign at the end that has the insignia for the, trying to think of the word, headquarters, I guess, I don't know. But yeah, it's basically that. I mean, Patriot is so much like S.H.I.E.L.D. or Argus that even the people, like the low-level agents, the unnamed people working at the computer screens, literally looked like they were wearing S.H.I.E.L.D. gear from like 2012's Avengers. And all they'd done is taken the S.H.I.E.L.D. patches off and put on the Patriot patches. It was, yeah. So location, set design gets a 4, accuracy and originality a 2, bringing the total to 56%, which is 16% higher than the IMDb score. So obviously I think it did a little bit better than what the scores it was given, but it's still, I mean, it was good, but I think what would have made it better is I don't know, the voices that they were given for the dub, and I tried to sit this aside while I was watching the film, but the voices they gave for the dub didn't really sort of fit, I guess, for the characters. I mean, they didn't really have a choice with Lur, because the first time you see him, he's praying in Armenian, and then for the rest of the film he's speaking in Russian. So it's kind of like, well, we've now heard what his actual voice sounds like, we have to find someone to match that. But everyone else all had really deep and serious voices, including like some of the women, and I feel like for an English dub you would have been able to just write the script and then hire some actors to do the dub, and then just put that in the credits or whatever, you know, like English dub for each character provided by, and then whatever actor. But it's, there were no voices I recognised, so yeah, it was just sort of, I don't know, a little off-putting, but at the same time I was expecting to be put off by the fact that the sounds didn't match the mouth movements. So yeah, anyway, on to that point that I brought up about the Black Widow movie, on the basis that we've already got Red Guardian being there, Black Widow, and then a SHIELD agent. And remember, SHIELD is, according to my theory, currently looking for Avengers members. If they put the idea to Red Guardian and Black Widow of starting a super team, then it's not far from what we've seen in released set footage and stuff to believe that Yelena Belova might help Black Widow. You know, sort of in like a sisterly, like sibling rivalry sort of competition way. Not in a I hate you, I want to kill you sort of way, but in a I want to beat you for the sole purpose of wanting to be the best, sort of daughter of the Red Room sort of thing, and having that like friendly rivalry. Winter Soldier potentially could turn up if he's being controlled by the Red Room as well. Iron Maiden, who is the main villain so far, as far as I'm aware, could be a part of it, and then sort of split off and be like, no, you know what, like the ideals that you've all got don't match what I think we should be doing, and that could be a major thing. As I said, bringing in Ursa Major, with the Guardians already existing, and the main sort of selling point of that is that they have a big guy that can turn into a bear. I feel like Ursa Major would be really cool at doing that, because he is a Marvel character that can do the exact same thing. I mean, even down to the Guardians had Arceus, and then it's Ursa Major. Named after a constellation, which is based on a Greek myth, but he's Russian. And then the last character I think that could be part of the MCU's Winter Guard would be Anton Vanko, the Crimson Dynamo, who was actually cited as a character that they had spliced with Whiplash for Iron Man 2, which happened to be the first film that Natasha was part of. Now, if Crimson Dynamo Anton Vanko was a part of the Winter Guard, as well as Black Widow, before she realised that team, you know, would have been working for like the Russian government or something, maybe, then having to fight one of her old teammates, being Iron Maiden, having her, you know, her sister of a sort, Yelena Belova, potentially die in her arms. There is a theory running around on the internet that that's the reason why she had blonde hair at the beginning of Infinity War. Was as a homage to Yelena Belova, as well as if Winter Soldier was part of this team, that would mean that when he was brainwashed in Civil War, that's what she's saying. You could at least recognize me about, like, she's still herself, and he's now back in his Russian mind control, hypnotism mindset. So he should still be able to recognize her of all the characters. But it could mean that eventually Crimson Dynamo turns and joins with Iron Maiden. I mean, calling it Iron Maiden when the first film that Natasha turned up in was Iron Man, kind of feels like having Crimson Dynamo be there leads to the reason why Natasha wanted to help shut down Whiplash so much, because she'd already started with shutting down Anton Vanko after he got deported, because he would have still had the technology available to build a Crimson Dynamo suit. She would have shut him down. They would have taken it back to maybe to Howard Stark. That's when he's seen that, you know, Anton's trying to continue his research and stuff, and they would have been able to stop him properly, which then would have sent him into his vodka-fueled rage, and then Natasha's simply just finishing her mission by stopping Whiplash in Iron Man 2. So very much like a family versus family sort of thing, except that in this sense it's more of a perceived family of people she grew up with in the Red Room versus the actual family of the Vancos, which then itself mirrors their own rivalry with the Starks, and then they end up sort of meeting while having Avengers membership recommended and stuff. Definitely something to think about. I definitely think the Winter Guard in some capacity will turn up, particularly since Red Guardian and Ursa Major are part of those. I mean, I really hope Ursa Major turns up. I know Red Guardian's already been cast, Black Widow's already been cast, Yelena Belova, Iron Maiden, they've already been cast. But of those, the only real member of Winter Guard is Red Guardian. But considering where Marvel's going with its representation of people, I kind of see Winter Guard having some sort of an appearance. And if that's the case, it means that we'll get some small cameo appearance from Alpha Flight whenever they decide to introduce Wolverine, which will be really cool. But yeah, that's all I've got for this video, guys. If you'd like to, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to hit the subscription button and the notification bell. All of next week is Marvel deep dives, and then we'll be finishing off the month with some of my usual monthly videos before getting stuck into some more deep dives next month. As always, links in the description down below. I'm only going to leave the IMDb page for this as a link below, just so that you can have a look at the actors' profiles and stuff, read a bit of trivia on the film. I mean, yeah, the dub's a little off-putting, but this is a really good film, and even with a score of 56% from me, I still think it's worth it. I mean, obviously, more so if you're a superhero fan like I am, but otherwise, yeah. And so with that, night to A2, and I'll check you all later.